Cracking down on crime. One local town is urging the state to do more following an uptick in incidents around town. Channel 3 New Haven Bureau Chief Matt McFarland joins us now live with the mobile newsroom outside of North Branford Town Hall with those details. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning, Roger. Well, North Branford's Town Council passed a resolution earlier this week asking the governor and the state legislature to act. Now, that resolution comes on the heels of a North Branford homeowner getting shot at earlier this month while interrupting a broad daylight burglary in which thieves were trying to steal his car. Councilors say there have been a number of recent incidents around town, from stolen cars to break-ins and robberies. And with the support of the town's police chief, the resolution asks legislators to put in place mandatory minimum sentences for armed robberies involving an occupied motor vehicle. They also want to see increased penalties for crimes committed using a stolen motor vehicle. Now, copies of the resolution, they were sent to the governor, legislative leaders, along with members of North Branford's delegation to the House and the Senate. We're live with the mobile newsroom in North Branford. Matt McFarland, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.